Hi everyone! Thanks for visiting my channel. If you're new here, welcome. I'm Carol, the Thrifty Chic Housewife. If you enjoy the content you find here, please consider subscribing, like and share my videos, and follow me on social media. I will leave all the links in the description box below. Speaking of social media, we are having a ton of fun in my new Facebook group that I started for canners. If you're not a canner, don't worry. I do lots of other things. I don't just do canning, but canning is by far a favorite of all of you. So anyway, it'd been on my mind to start a Facebook group, and I just wasn't sure if I wanted to deal with all of it. There are horror stories of experiences people have had being in groups with people being unkind and nasty and all that. And I just didn't know if I wanted to deal with that, but I felt that those of you who have followed me for a while kind of needed a platform. I wanted to see what's going on in your kitchen, so I wanted you to have a place for you to share the things that you're canning and what is going on with you. So I decided to go ahead, bite the bullet, and do it. Worst case scenario, I have to take it down. But it's been just a few days and we are just having a ton of fun over there. So if you are a canner and you want to get in touch with like-minded people, I encourage you to stop by my Facebook page. I will leave all the links in the description box for you so you can easily find me. I do have a Facebook page that is just for my channel, just general stuff. We talk about cooking, canning, all kinds of stuff over there. But underneath my Facebook page, I do have a tab for groups, and in there you will find Canning with Carol and Friends. And we're just having a ton of fun over there, and it's just been so nice. Everyone has been so sweet and helpful. For those of you who have questions, it's a great place to learn, especially if you're new. I answer questions, of course, but there are lots of other knowledgeable people who answer questions, help me answer questions, and you guys help each other. It has just been wonderful. Everyone's been so sweet and so kind, and we're just having a ton of fun. I'm just so happy with how it all turned out. So if you're a canner, or if you're thinking about canning, hop on over there. Join my group. It is a private group, so you'll have to request to join. Please answer the questions. That helps us to make sure that you are on the same page as we are. Safety, of course, is first and foremost, and then kindness. I don't want any snarky, mean-spirited, nasty comments. If you don't have something nice to say, please just keep scrolling and don't comment, but we would love to have you there if the rest of the criteria fits what you have in mind. So anyway, check out my Facebook page, check out my canning group, and come over there and have some fun with us. So today we're going to be canning up apples. It is apple season, and I stopped by the orchard and got some beautiful ginger gold apples. Look at the size of those beauties. So good. If you are not familiar with ginger gold, they're kind of a tart sweet apple with a little bit of spicy flavor in the background. Their name describes them well, ginger, but there's not a heavy spice flavor. It's just a little bit there, but they're really delicious. They're great for all kinds of things. You can can with them, you can make pies with them. They're wonderful just for eating. You can bake with them, so they're just great for lots of things, but today we're going to be canning those up. The procedure that I'm going to show you is also good for pears. I was asked that question, so I thought I would just cover that. What we're doing, you can also use for processing pears, and they're just great to have on your shelf. They're really versatile. Apples store fairly well in the refrigerator, but canning them in a nice syrup is just a delicious treat when it's not apple season, and they're versatile and they're just really not good. So I love having canned apples on my shelf, and we may do some other things with them, hint hint. So anyway, you might want to get it on your canning list, and they're easy to do. They are a little time consuming because you have to peel and quarter them and cut them however you want them, but it's all worth the effort. So that's what we're going to get busy doing. I'm going to can in pints today. I'm going to can about 8 pints of the apples. It is a high acid food, so we can either steam can or we can water bath can. That's up to you. You guys know that I love steam canning. So I'm going to steam can mine. So there's that. And then the other thing that I wanted to cover, we're going to be canning them in a light syrup. Now you can can them in water, but I think all fruits, and I will post a link where the powers that be that oversee canning, they agree that canning them in syrup is beneficial for them retaining their flavor and their color and all that. So I use a light syrup. And you can go even lighter than what I am using. I will leave a link in the description box for you for your options for syrup, but you can can them in water if you prefer. So the one thing I did want to point out though is I have the all new Ball Book of Canning and Preserving. In their chart for syrups for canning fruit is different than the National Center of Home Food Preservation. They list obviously the different types of syrup: super light, extra light, light, medium, heavy. And you can also use honey, they say in here. On the National Center for Home Food Preservation's website, their medium syrup is what Ball is referring to as light syrup. And I've always used the one in the Ball book, so it depends on which reference you're looking at. If it's from the Ball Book of Canning, the all new Ball Book of Canning, it's referred to as light syrup. If you're looking at the National Center for Home Food Preservation's website, it's listed as a medium syrup. But that's perfect for me. It's not super sweet, but it's just sweet enough to add to the fruit, in my opinion. But they do list in both resources, they do list, like I said, the different types of syrups that you can make with the quantities of sugar and water that you need. And then they also explain what each syrup is best suited for. So the light syrup, or the medium syrup, depending where you're looking, is good for use with sweet apples, dark sweet cherries, berries, and grapes. So we're perfect. Ginger gold apples are kind of a tart sweet. I think they lean a little more sweet than tart, so that's the syrup that I'm going to be using. And like I said, it's not heavy at all. It just lends a little something extra to the fruit, in my opinion. Plus, if you don't want the sugar, you can always drain them. You don't have to drink the syrup, but I think it works really well for helping to keep your fruit really nice in your jars. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to peel, core, and slice our apples. And we don't want them to oxidize while we're peeling the other ones. And we know that when fruit's exposed to air, it can start to turn brown. So we need to put them in a solution that will prevent them from doing that. There are different options out there. I'm going to be using, because this is what I have on hand, Mrs. Wage's fresh fruit preserver. This has in it sugar, urethoric acid, ascorbic acid, which is vitamin C, and then an anti-caking agent. Ball also makes one. Theirs is a little bit different ingredients, but it's basically the same thing. They're just using a little bit different ingredients, but it's the same thing. But just make sure that whatever one you're using, you refer to the instructions on the canister. I know Ball's instructions are a little bit different than the Mrs. Wage's ones I'm using. So their instructions on this canister is to add 3 tablespoons of the fruit preserver to a half a gallon of water. So that's what I've done. So that's ready for my apples to go into. It also states that you can add 1 teaspoon excuse me, you can add 1 teaspoon of fresh fruit preserver to 1 cup of your syrup, and then can your fruit that way. I've never done that. I just do my soaking beforehand, and that seems to be fine. I don't have any trouble with discoloration, so I'm not going to add any to my jars, but you can. But the first thing we're going to do is we are going to make our syrup. Now, if you've hung around my channel very much, you know I like to personalize the things that I make and make it my own. So what I'm going to do is I am going to add a couple of flavorings, delicious flavorings, to our apples. I am going to add some cinnamon stick to my syrup, and I'm also going to add some vanilla beans. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put that in my syrup and let it simmer very gently with a lid on. We don't want any evaporation to happen to our syrup. So I'm going to Put everything together, put the lid on, and let that simmer very lowly while, lowly simmer. We're gonna let it simmer on very low while I'm preparing my apples. And then the flavor of the vanilla bean and the cinnamon will infuse into the syrup. You don't have to do this step, but it's just kind of nice to jazz it up a little bit, make it a little bit different, add a little bit of flavor boost. I'm all about using things that boost the flavor when I'm canning or cooking. So that's what we're gonna do to get started, and then we'll get started peeling and coring and cutting up our apples. Okay guys, we're ready to make our syrup. I have 5 1/4 cups of water in my pan. I'm gonna add 2 1/4 cups of sugar and give that a stir. Turn on my heat. I'm gonna go ahead and add a cinnamon stick and 2 vanilla beans. I just slit the vanilla beans down the center, and I'm just gonna put those in there so we can infuse some delicious cinnamon vanilla flavor into our syrup. What I'm gonna do is just bring it up to a simmer, and I'm gonna continue to stir it until the sugar dissolves. Once the sugar dissolves, I'm gonna go ahead and put the lid on it so that there's no evaporation, and just keep it warm while I'm taking care of my apples. Okay, so now we're gonna start working on our apples. So I just went ahead and rinsed my apples off. So this is how I do it. You can do it however it works for you. I have my 1/2 gallon of cold water with my 3 tablespoons of my fruit preserver in it. And then what I do is I just take my apples, I use a vegetable peeler to get the peeling off. Once I have the peeling off, I just go ahead and use a larger knife and cut it down the center and quarter it. These are some really big apples. And then just take out the core. And then I just go ahead and cut it into slices. You can have it, you can quarter it, you can cut it into slices, but that's about what I like. And then just go ahead and put your slices in your water. Okay guys, I have my apples already, and then I've drained them. So now we need to fish out our cinnamon stick and our vanilla bean. And I've tasted the syrup, it's so good. Just a slight hint of cinnamon and vanilla, it's just delicious. So I highly recommend infusing that flavor into your syrup if you enjoy that flavor. So now what we're gonna do a hot pack. We're gonna hot pack our jars. That just means that we're putting hot food into a hot jar. It's not recommended to raw pack pears or apple slices, so we're gonna hot pack. So we're gonna take our apple slices and put them in our hot syrup. And the instructions are to boil it for 5 minutes. So I'm going to bring that up to a boil. We're gonna boil our apple slices for 5 minutes. And while that's happening, I'm gonna get my canner and my jars ready. Okay guys, I boiled my apple slices for 5 minutes, so now we are ready to start canning. Modern canning guidelines state that if you are processing for 10 minutes or more, you don't need to pre-sterilize jars or lids, and we are going to be processing for 20 minutes. The 20 minutes applies to pints or quarts, so you could mix and match. If you wanted to do some pints and some quarts, you can do it all in the same batch because the processing time is just 20 minutes. You need to start with a hot jar. I've washed my jars and they are sitting in my sink full of hot water, and I've washed my lids and set those aside. You no longer need to simmer your lids. So I'm all ready to go. We are going to pack our jars with apple slices and then top them off with our syrup, and we are looking for a 1/2 inch of headspace. So let's get going. 2 jars. And I just use a slotted spoon to take out my slices. There we go. Then add your syrup to 1/2 inch headspace. Use your debubbling tool, chopstick, or plastic butter knife to release your air bubbles. If your headspace changes, you may need to add more syrup. And clean the rims of your jars. and add your bands to fingertip height. Okay guys, my jars are all filled, but I wanted to show you something because this is a common problem and people talk, you will come across this if you, this is for those of you who are new. Or maybe some of you who are seasoned canners but didn't really understand how to fix this problem. There's this jar, I guess they're not too hot yet. I'm going to show you this jar. You see how the fruit is floating? And see how this one is not? Fruit float and your veggies floating is a common problem. Supposedly, hot packing should alleviate that. Sometimes yes, sometimes not. I don't completely agree with that, but because I haven't experienced that to always be true. But it is supposed to alleviate some of that, and they float because of the air that's in them. So the theory is that if you heat them, some of the air is released, whatever. Anyway, but what I wanted to point out to you is if you notice that your tomatoes or your fruit or whatever it is that you are canning is floating, try to rearrange your pieces that are in your jar and see if you can fit more in there. If you packing them tightly, not super tight because that can cause other problems, but if you can pack them a little bit tighter, that will help alleviate some of that as well. So I just wanted to point that out. That's a question I get. Why are my tomatoes floating? Why are my pickles floating? Why is my fruit floating? That's why. It's the air in your fruit. So if you can pack your jars a little bit tighter, that will help alleviate that, as well as hot packing. So I am going to go ahead and put him in there. I'm going to rearrange this jar and then we're going to get started with our canning process. Okay, I'm all set now. I rearranged the jar, got another slice or two of apple in there, and it took care of the problem. Okay, so I have 8 quarts or 8 pints of apples in my canner. We're going to go ahead and put the lid on. We're going to crank up our heat. We are going to bring it up to temperature. Once your canner is up to temperature, if you are water bath canning, you need to have your jars covered by at least 1 inch of water. You need to bring everything up to a full boil. Once you're at a full boil, then you can start your processing time. If you are steam canning, you need to see about a 6 inch of steam being released from your steam vent, and then you can start timing. For those of you who have a steam canner with the dial on top, you will be just inside of your green zone. Once we get there, you want to reduce your heat just to maintain that. Okay guys, we are up to temperature. I have a stream of steam approximately 6 inches long coming out of my steam vents, and my dial is just inside of the green zone, so we can start timing. Like I said before, we need 20 minutes, and that's for quarts or pints. What we want to do now is you want to slowly reduce your heat just to maintain where you are. If you are water bath canning, you are at a full boil. So we'll slowly reduce the heat and just maintain that for 20 minutes. Okay guys, our processing time is up, so we can go ahead and turn our heat off. Let the steam die down a second. And then you can open your canner. This is true for water bath canning or steam canning. You just want to remove the lid so that it's away from you so that you don't get burned. Now for steam canning, you can go ahead and remove your jars immediately if you want to, or you can let them rest the 5 minutes. That's up to you. Sounds pretty bubbly in there. I'm going to let mine rest for just a few minutes and then we will remove them. Okay, so we can go ahead and remove our jars. If you were water bath canning, you want to wait 5 minutes. Steam canning, you can wait 5 minutes, or you can remove them as soon as you're ready. So let's take a look at our apples. Okay, give you a close-up. Aren't those pretty? They look great. They're going to taste fantastic this winter. So even though we talked about fruit floating earlier, see, I've still got some floating. I don't know. I've tried hot packing. Obviously, they recommend hot packing for apples, and that has not completely alleviated the problem, and I do try to pack them as tightly as possible. So if you have that problem, there's nothing wrong. It's just fruit sometimes floats, and some vegetables float as well. So don't be alarmed. It's totally fine. Just do the best you can with packing them, and that's about all you can do. So if you haven't, I hope you enjoyed coming along with me today. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to leave them for me in the comment section. Again, we're having tons of fun in my Facebook group, so feel free to join us over there. There's lots of great resources over there, and the ideas people toss around and the things that they've done is really fun. So I hope if you're a canner or if you're interested in canning, you'll stop by and join us. Thanks so much for joining me today, and I'll see you next time. Have a great day.